All right, everybody, welcome back to section 3 of our public policy course. And today we're going to be talking about how policies are formed or created or, get started in the whole policy creation process. Okay? Now, there are kind of 3 steps to this kind of, pre actually being implemented. There's the problem identification step where we figure out what's wrong and what we need to fix and what we need to do. There's the agenda setting process where that problem kind of, gets onto somebody's desk who can do something about it. And then there's the policy formulation step where they actually figure out what the options are and what, try to gauge what the best option is for creating a solution to that problem. Now, we're going to take kind of each of these in turn and go a little bit deeper into all 3 of these. So we're going to start, obviously, with problem identification. So, what do we mean by a problem? Well, in this case, a problem is some kind of condition or some kind of issue or some kind of circumstance that the government can help with. Now, if you're talking about non-public policy, if you're talking about private policy, replace government with, the boss of the company or the leader of the group or whatever. One of the things we have to worry about here is tractability. And this is kind of, what powers does the government have to be able to solve this problem? So, for instance, hurricanes. Government, no matter how powerful, can't really stop a hurricane, right? But they can help with the cleanup and disaster relief and clean water and stuff like that afterwards. Another issue is we have to look at causes and symptoms. So, in a perfect world, policy would always kind of address the cause of a problem, the real underlying issue. But sometimes either that's not possible or it's really not clear what the underlying cause is, right? So in the case of hurricanes, hurricane damage is caused by hurricanes. Government can't really do anything about the hurricanes themselves, so they have to kind of treat just the symptom, right? Unemployment. We can't really all agree on what the causes of unemployment really are. So while we might attempt to address the root cause or a possible root cause, that can be a lot more difficult than it really seems like at first glance. So a lot of times policy kind of by sheer force of reality has to address symptoms, but in an ideal world it would always go after the root cause of problems rather than just the symptoms themselves. Now, one of the things we have to worry about is the fact that all problems have to be looked at in kind of social context, right? Because as society changes, or even as we're sitting here in 2020 some odd United States, our society and different aspects of our society and different parts of our society will construct problems in a different way, right? So different groups are going to see things as problems, whereas other groups might see them as either not a problem or indeed a benefit, right? We have to look at problems through that kind of social lens to figure out what really is a problem and what's not a problem, or what's a benefit. So that social context and social construction of problems is a really, really important factor in all this. And then, of course, we have to look at severity, right? If something is causing huge unemployment or tons of crime or, lots of other really serious issues, obviously that's going to be a problem that government needs to handle faster and better. Whereas if it's a relatively minor problem, if government and policymakers only have certain amounts of time in the day, they only have certain amount of money, they only have certain amounts of ability to put forth effort. So it's the more severe problems, the more serious problems that are obviously going to kind of advance in the process faster. Now, sometimes politicians especially, but also sometimes, leaders of other organizations with non-public policy, they'll create a problem or pretend a problem exists that doesn't really exist, right? Just because they want to solve that non-existent problem, right? And this does two things. Number one, it makes them look good from a PR perspective. Like, hey, we solved this problem. Yay, vote for us. When in reality, it wasn't really a problem in the first place, right? So, if Congress tomorrow passes a law that says, oh, we're going to ban space aliens from the Earth. I mean, great, but you solved a problem that doesn't really exist. And the other thing there is sometimes the solution has benefits to those politicians other than the contrived issue, right? So it's not the problem that they say they're trying to solve that they're actually trying to solve. It's some other thing that they're trying to do or some other problem that they're really trying to solve. So we might say, we're going to ban space aliens from the Earth, and then pass a law that actually restricts all foreign immigration into the country. So the true purpose of that law was to prevent immigration of humans from other countries, but they contrived this problem of, space aliens are going to invade, because they couldn't just come out and say, we want to ban immigration from other countries, right? So they kind of created a new problem, and the solution to the new problem really kind of solves this other problem that they didn't want to actually talk about or didn't want to actually let people know that they were trying to solve or create a solution for, all right? A lot of both state legislature and national legislature time is spent on private problems. So this is issues and policies and laws that are passed specifically for either, one person or one small group of people or one organization or one small geographic location. In Congress, a lot of times they will call this casework. So, we were watching one of my favorite television shows that I've mentioned on this in this lecture before, The West Wing, last night, and in one of the scenes, a veterans group was coming to talk to the president about some other issue. But while they were there, one of the veterans went to the president's chief of staff and said, "Hey, I got a friend, disabled veteran. He really needs a new wheelchair. The VA is, dragging its feet and not helping him. Is there any way you could step in and help us out and try to get this disabled veteran a new wheelchair?" And the chief of staff said, "Yeah, sure, of course." And it becomes kind of a plot point in that episode of the show. And that kind of individualized help is something that, not only the president can do, but Congress much more commonly does. Obviously, the president's ability to pardon is a huge part of this. The president will routinely kind of take a look at people who are in federal prison and decide whose sentences can be either commuted, i.e. lessened, or pardoned entirely. And so every president does, anywhere from kind of a few dozen to a few hundred of these pardons or commutations throughout their tenure. And that's kind of an individualized policy specifically for that person, right? Now, whose problems get the most attention? So Schneider and Ingram came up with this really interesting kind of way to look at this. And they see it as an interaction of two variables, right? There's the social construction of power, and there's actual political power. So the social part is about kind of how society views that group that's having the problem. Are they seen positively by the public, or are they seen negatively by the public? And then political power is, can they talk to Congress and go in and get things done? Do they have either the monetary capital or the political capital to be able to go in and call a congressman and say, hey, this is a problem. Please put it on your agenda. Please try and fix this. And based on those two variables, Schneider and Ingram kind of created these four groups, right? The advantaged, which have both positive social views and political power. So this would be like, veterans groups, right? They're seen very positively by society, and they also have a decent amount of political power and the ability to kind of contact legislators or other policymakers and get their concerns actually addressed. Then there's the dependents, where they're seen positively by society, but they don't necessarily have a lot of political power in that group. So in this area would be things like children, right? Children, everybody loves kids. We all think children should have great lives and lots of opportunities in their lives and all those things. But they don't have a lot of power themselves. You don't see a lot of groups lobbying for benefits for children that are actually composed of children. Usually it's somebody else having to do that for them, i.e. adults, right? There's contenders is the third group, and these are people who society doesn't see very positively, but they still have a lot of political power. So like, large oil companies, right? Society kind of sees them as not the most positive group in the world, but they have huge amounts of both economic and political capital. And then finally, there's the deviants. And these are the people who don't have either a positive view by society or a lot of political capital. And this is things like, prisoners or the homeless, groups like that. And they have a lot of difficulty getting their concerns addressed by policymakers. So I made up this nice little chart here. Obviously, it's not the most artistic thing in the world. I am not a professor of art or anything creative, although I highly wish I was. Those guys create a lot of really cool stuff and definitely earn their money, but that is not me. So I made up this little chart that shows you, social approval and political power. The advantaged are here. The contenders would be here. You can put each one of those four groups into these four categories, just to give you a little better visual kind of representation of what I'm talking about here. But anyway, that's enough for right now. We're going to take a little break. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it.